Good morning, wherever you are in the world.
Mhm.
Light dawning, light returning. Love always resident, always as all there is. Love is all there is. It's a song. It's the truth. There is only love. Because there is only one thing happening. There is only one thing. Call it God or source or universe, whatever your name. It's still only one thing. There's only one game in town. And it's everything. It is the creation itself overflowing into this existence we know here. It is the power, the beauty, the peace, the love of Source. All of it. And because it's all there is, I am of that. I am one of that. A unique expression of that. Each of us is a unique expression of that. None of us are the same. We are each of us unique. But we are still of that. And I am so grateful to know this. I am so grateful that when I think of beauty in the world, I know I am of that. When I think of love in the world, I know I am of that. Today, peace is at the forefront of our altar, our message. In many ways, peace is at the forefront of our desire. I am of that. So I move myself into a space of saying, I am that now. It's not later. I am those things now, not later. Always, all the time. I allow a little bit more of it to show, and I am grateful that I can, that I have the choice, because that's what Spirit is. It's about choice and freedom to be as magnificent and beautiful and powerful and strong and wise and prosperous as I can possibly be. And I know that's true for all of us in this community where we hold hands and hug and feel that love and hear Christmas bells jingling in the distance and laugh and enjoy each other. That's love, and that's life, and that's God, Spirit, Source, showing up as each of us. So today I say yes. And I know there's a yes coming to me from every heart. Yes. It's all good. It's all God. And so it is. So let's take 2 minutes to saute in this lovely knowing that it's all good all the time. Thank you.
So today we're celebrating, the talk title is The Incredible Light of Being, which is a little play on the book and the movie, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. And so we're celebrating 4 different powerful holidays that, as I mentioned, that are all happening within a 5-day stretch of each other. So yesterday was the winter solstice, and celebrating that. Coming up this Wednesday is Christmas during the day, and then in the evening begins the Hanukkah celebration in the Jewish tradition that goes to, I believe, January 1st, 2nd? January 2nd, thank you. And then also Kwanzaa begins on the day after Christmas for 7 days, which takes it into early January. And so all of these are festivals of light. All of these are festivals of celebrating light. That's the common focus within them. And not just light, but light in the darkest of times. Light in the darkest of times. It's been said that we need the darkness to see the stars. Yes? Without the darkness, we would not know light. Because we would just sit there and we'd be in light, but we wouldn't even know that we were in light. We need something to contrast, compare that with. So without the darkness, we wouldn't know light. And we think it is darkness that covers the world, we tend to judge it as bad or scary. But everything living is recreated in that mysterious darkness, in that mysterious moment, that moment of rest and renewal and rebirth that covers all of us. Each day, each return of the sun is a resurrection, a renewal, and a rebirth. So each of these holy days calls us to appreciate both the dark and the light, and the richness of both, recognizing they both coexist within all of us. Yes? You and I have a darkness within and a light within. And a darkness, again, not as a bad thing, but as that rich creative soil, that beautiful womb of birth. And so we step into this recognition of light and dark within and let these days inspire and teach us. And they inspire us to ask what needs to be reborn in my life. Because all of these are holidays of rebirth. The sun is reborn on the solstice. And ancient peoples celebrate the rebirth or the birth of the sun god, coming back with his light or her light. In Jesus, we celebrate, or in Christmas, we celebrate the birth of Jesus, but that's really simply the renewal of the covenant of God with the people. In the Hanukkah, we celebrate the renewal and the rebirth of the light of the temple after it had been desecrated, and it's now sanctified. And in Kwanzaa, we celebrate the rebirth of a people who have been oppressed in a faraway land from their native land, and the rebirth of dignity and of holiness within that community. So we allow that. We ask what needs to be reborn in my life. And so they teach us that no matter how dark the darkness seems, the light always returns. You know, we could say that the summer solstice teaches us that no matter how bright it is, the darkness returns. Yes? Yeah. And we recognize, by the way, that half the world right now is celebrating the summer solstice. You know? Something that the Northern Europeans, as they were going, oh, it's getting so dark, weren't even aware of. That other places, it's getting more light, and it's getting more light. And that's kind of like how our life is. I read something yesterday that with the James, what's the telescope that's up there? The James Webb telescope and they've correlated measurements from that telescope and the Hubble telescope, and they realized that when they say the universe is expanding, it depends on your perspective and where you're measuring from. And they said that basically is kind of rearranging and undoing the whole view of the universe. That scientists are suddenly saying we don't have an accurate picture of the universe. Isn't that great? We live in a mystery that's constantly unfolding, and we're constantly unfolding more and more and more awareness of it. And so whatever we think we know, there's more. And at some point in time, we all have to say, I didn't know that. Yes? So we are here celebrating, if you will, the yin-yang of life. Remembering that darkness is not bad, just a time and process of rest, renewal, and rebirth. And having looked at this, let's focus on one of those holy days. So the one most celebrated in our culture here is, Christmas. So the Christmas story. And this story, just like the ones about the rebirth of the sun god and the temple candles lasting 8 days, are made up. They're symbolic and they're metaphorical stories. I would love to do a talk. I told Buffy I would love to do a talk that takes the whole history of the Christmas story, how it developed, how the idea that we needed a Messiah, the two different stories that Matthew and Luke have that are completely different from each other, but get sort of mushed together into one story. Those of you who've been around for a while know that I always at this season like to ask, how many magi showed up at the stable where Jesus was born? And that will be the standard answer. The truth is, Luke doesn't say that Jesus was born in a stable, just laid in a manger. And the wise men are in Matthew. And they showed up at the house in Bethlehem where Mary lived, according to the story. So we have this kind of picture, and they're made up. I'm sorry, if some of you take this as absolute literal gospel truth, this is probably not. This is going to disrupt that. But that talk would take an hour or two to really, really, really dive into, and I figured we want to go have some food afterwards and get on with it, so I'm not going to do that. So let's just acknowledge there's far more to these birth stories of Jesus from Matthew and Luke, and today let's look at a couple of inspirations and teachings from this birth story, beginning by recognizing that these birth stories are about much more than the birth of one special person a long time ago. Okay? In a galaxy far, far away. But are about the birth of our own divinity within us. St. Augustine said, what does it avail me? Which is a way of saying, what does it matter to me that this birth is always happening if it does not happen in me? That it should happen in me is what matters. So there's a birth and a rebirth that is constantly happening. This Christ consciousness was always present, always available. The Christ consciousness is the union of the divinity and the human. The union of that, the clear union of that. And so it's constantly happening or trying to happen within us. Some of us are there with St. Thomas Aquinas, who also had a different prayer and said, Lord, grant me chastity, but not just yet. I so relate to that prayer. Lord, grant me a healthier diet, but after Christmas. Meister Eckhart goes on to say that God never begat but one Son, but the eternal is forever begetting the only begotten. So this is the creative process. Every spirit, the divinity, the God, whatever you want to call it, shows up as form. That's how we know it. That's how we experience it. It shows up as form. And so it's constantly doing that, yes? It's constantly being this physical form into existence. But we are often like the inn where there is no room. Like the intellectual encountered by the Zen master, who after telling the Zen master how much he knew over dinner, the Zen master after dinner pours him a cup of tea, and as soon as the teacup is full, just keeps right on pouring the tea until it's running down over the table and onto the floor. And he tells him that this cup is like his mind. It's so full that nothing new could enter. See, we could instead be inspired by Mary's answer in the Luke story. When told by the angel that she was going to give birth, she says, "Here I am, a handmaid of the Spirit. Let it be done to me according to your word." Here I am. Let it be done to me. This is a theme that actually runs through the whole Jesus story, who concludes, towards the end of his life with, "Not my will, but thine be done." This is what his mother in this story starts by saying. He also says, "Why call me great? It's not me, but the Father within that does the work." So it's this invitation to get my, as Emerson says, bloated nothingness. Everybody who knows me knows well, it's one of my favorite little phrases. Get my bloated nothingness out of the way of the flow of the divine circuits. And that's what Mary's answer was. And instead, most of us do the prayer of St. Augustine. Yes, I'm willing to surrender to my divinity, but maybe a little later. I'm kind of busy right now with all the distractions and agendas and appointments of my life. And deep down we know we're supposed to, but we also know that this birth, like any birth, is going to totally disrupt and mess up our current life. Any parents relate to that? Yeah. So yet if we could see the long-term outcome that saying yes to birthing our divine nature would create in our lives, we would say yes in a heartbeat. When we understand that God sending his only begotten Son into the world isn't about a physical person in a physical world, but about the birth, rebirth, remembering of the Christ within all of us. That is what we are being called to do today. And frankly, we're being called to do it every single day. We recognize that we're always being called to be mothers of God. We're always being called to mother, to birth that divinity, and to nurture it and to let it grow. To say yes to the divine nature already conceived and alive within us, and let it be born. so that we can also say, like Mary, my soul magnifies the Lord and my spirit rejoices in God. The Sufi poet Rumi puts it this way. How many of you thought you'd hear a Sufi poet on Christmas Day being quoted? Yeah, okay, yeah, some of you know me. He says, when the ocean comes to you as a lover, the ocean representing the infinite ocean of divinity, when the ocean comes to you as a lover, marry at once, quickly for God's sake. Don't postpone it. Existence has no better gift. We are called to let go of our conditioned beliefs and striving after all the things that come out of our conditioning, our control, our comfort, our safety, our short-term satisfaction with things, and instead give birth to the wild divinity that lives in our souls, that is the Son of God, that wants to be born through us. Will you say yes? Yes. When we live in this nature, we stop trying to be the singer and become the song. We stop trying to become the dancer and instead melt into and flow with the dance. We stop trying to be loving and instead we are love itself. We stop trying to get lit up and recognize we are the light. So this week I'm going to invite us to do one spiritual practice and one only. And that is to ask, what is the light? What is the wild divinity seeking to be born in, through, and as me? And say yes. When your inner angel announces it, say yes. Will you play with that practice this week? Yes. Beautiful. I will too. I'm going to close with a quote from Meister Eckhart. Meister Eckhart was a 14th century Christian mystic who later on, when the church finally figured out what he was actually saying, called him a heretic and censored all of his stuff and saying, no. Fortunately, it all survived. So he says, where the creature, which is our conditioned nature, where the creature stops, there God begins to be. As the image, which is our self-image, our self-identity of, I'm just me, this person right here. As our image goes out, God goes in. Oh, my dear people, what harm does it do you to allow God to be God in you? Go completely out of yourself for God's love, and God comes completely out of himself for love of you. I'll say that line again. Go completely out of yourself for God's love, and God comes completely out of himself for love of you. And when these two have gone out, what remains is a simplified one. In this one, the Father brings the Son to birth in the innermost source. I invite you to go out for the love of God and let the love of God come into you. So we have an affirmation. I say this with me. I say yes to the divine light seeking birth through me. Let's say that again. I say yes to the divine light seeking birth through me. And so it is.